DaBaby's been in the news for the last couple of weeks over comments that he made at a concert. Now, at the particular concert last month, he made what has been called anti-gay remarks on stage at the Rolling Loud Musical Festival. Now, we're going to play these comments for you, just giving you a warning right now. They are crude, and so if you want to turn this audio down, you want to turn away, that's no problem. So we're going to give you time to do so. It has set off a torrent of criticism. He's been dropped from a number of festivals. It led to an apology from him, but then he repealed the apology. I'll explain all of that. This is what he said in concert.
You didn't show up today with HIV, AIDS, any of them deadly sexually transmitted diseases that'll make you die in 2-3 weeks. Put a cell phone light in the air. Lady, if your pussy smell like water, put a cell phone light in the air. Fellas.
Lights up.
Fellas, if you ain't sucking nigga dick in the parking lot, put your cell phone lights in the air.
Let's be real about this shit.
Yeah, keep it fucking real.
Some of y'all niggas suspect as a motherfucker. Let's be real.
Now, DaBaby, after that, he doubled down and said that his gay followers understood what he was saying, that it was not a big deal. That did not sit well with a number of festival organizers. He was accused of spreading misinformation. Many consider it harmful with regards to HIV and AIDS. Now, this has prompted a variety of conversations with folks about this issue, including rappers and the issue of homophobia, but also HIV and AIDS. So it's been going back and forth, what's going on. So then DaBaby dropped a video on his Instagram page where he was talking about this whole issue of where he apologized for his comments. Well, over the weekend, he actually pulled that video. It was deleted. So it raises a lot of questions to deal with. And so it's been a lot of back and forth. Now, let me join right now by, first of all, a number of people who've been trying to educate DaBaby. There were people who actually signed a letter saying that they would meet with him as well. Now, Jasmine Koenig, of course, we've had Jasmine on the show for many times. What was interesting is that Jasmine dropped a piece that I found to be quite interesting, and this is how she titled it. She titled it, DaBaby Outrage Illustrates Double Standard. So when you click her piece, what she lays out in this article are how people, I'm pulling it up right now to show you exactly what she wrote, and she said, a double standard is a rule of, so she goes on and talks about his lyrics. So she says in here, look how me and my little bitch be dressing. Ain't fucking her right, but you ain't pulling her hair. Yeah, bitch ass nigga. Oh, you asking for pictures with niggas. That's from one of his lyrics. Actually from one of his songs that have earned multiple nominations. Now, this is what Jasmine writes. Most people who knew of Charlotte rapper DaBaby were okay with him profiting off calling black men and women niggas and bitches. But once he talked about sucking dicks in the parking lot and dying from AIDS in 2 to 3 weeks, then he had to be canceled. He said that she writes, because of the continued stigmatization of HIV and AIDS among blacks, HIV and AIDS are still being used as a weapon. Now, so she goes on to write in here how folks are talking about, and this is what she writes, somehow as a black lesbian woman, I'm supposed to be more outraged over DaBaby's homophobic and anti-AIDS comments than I am about being called a bitch or a nigga. How does that work? The only conclusion that I could draw was that nobody cares when a black rapper is calling other black people niggers and bitches. It pays, and it pays well for so many people. But when that same black rapper says something offensive about gays, which by definition happens to include white gay people, that's when he must be canceled. For the record, white people in general, and specifically white gay people, aren't known for shutting down and canceling rappers who call black men and women niggers or bitches. They have pretty much always been okay with that by way of their silence. A double standard is a rule or principle which is unfairly applied in different ways to different people or groups. She says, Jasmine writes, I am black, I am a woman, and I am a lesbian, so this is no way a defense of DaBaby. He was making ignorant statements long before his latest inflammatory comments. But I really do want to know how we're choosing who to cancel and for what reason? This selective outrage is confusing and hypocritical. Why can DaBaby's concerts be canceled for his homophobic remarks and not for his misogynistic lyrics and use of the N-word? Is it because then 95% of today's rappers would also be canceled? Because, let's admit it, almost all of the successful rappers today got there using the words bitch, hoe, and nigga. Is it because the music industry and its connoisseurs have no problem with profiting off of the degradation of women, black women in particular, and the use of the N-word? That would never happen with anti-Semitic lyrics. In fact, it doesn't happen with any other type of hate speech. Because black people are okay with calling each other bitches, hoes, and niggas as long as we are. Everyone else, including us, is allowed to make a profit off of it. Unlike with other groups of people, be it the LGBTQ community, Jews, Asian Pacific Islanders, or any other race, we are the only people who are okay with self-degradation under the guise of replacing the letters ER with an A. And as far as bitches and hoes go, we call ourselves that too. In this politically correct Me Too woke world that we live in, that just doesn't seem like something that would be tolerated, let alone accepted. It's easy to hop aboard the hashtag cancel DaBaby train. All aboard. I need the same energy that's being used to punish DaBaby for his homophobic and anti-AIDS comments to be directed towards rappers like him who continue to call women bitches and hoes and use the N-word. Omakongo and Julian. Let's talk about this. So really what Jasmine is doing, Jasmine is challenging not just black people, she's also challenging gay folks to say, y'all quiet about that, but you're commenting on this. Why not both? And as she said, she's not defending DaBaby. She's saying, you want to cancel him for both, not just one.
You know, her piece is very thoughtful. It's a really good piece. And I think it's really important to challenge us, but also the industry. There it is, the industry. Remember Michael Jackson had some little lyric that was somewhat anti-Semitic?
Well, they don't care about us.
Yeah, he said, I think he said, Jew me, screw me, something along those lines.
Jew me, don't you black and blue me, kick me, don't you black or white me.
Yeah, so that record had already been printed. They ordered the destruction of all of those records, and for the apologize. Yes.
So basically, you could do that with another group of people. You could do it with black people. You couldn't do it with any other group of people. Even if you did some things. I mean, years ago when I did daily radio, one time I said Christopher Columbus was a drunken Italian who got lost. You would have been stunned at the number of letters the station got saying, she can't say that. But it's the truth, the man did get lost. So somehow we're at the bottom of we black people and women are at the bottom of the food chain when it comes to outrage. You can say anything about us, and some of us will laugh, some of us will say right on, and many of us will go right through their heads. But it's not just about us. It's about an industry that profits from the degradation of black people, about an industry that profits from DaBaby has been a fool, from what I can tell. I really am too old to follow that kind of mess. But it seems like he's been a fool from the word go. Only when he starts talking about homosexual sex does he suddenly become cancelable. If you were to cancel him, you should have canceled him some time ago. So I kudos to Jasmine for putting it out there like that, putting herself out there like that. I'm sure she's going to get both positive and negative feedback, but I think her piece was very good.
Omakongo?
Even beyond the industry, there's this mentality of do whatever you want in the black community to yourselves, but you're going to stop when you come towards us. You can go back to the riots after Rodney King, right? As soon as it started moving out to the suburbs, oh, here's the National Guard. The list goes on, right? Look, when we come back to the industry, I did my doctorate on Jay-Z. I teach several hip-hop related courses at American University. And the fact of the matter is, when she talked about white gay men being silent, I would argue that many of these guys are not silent. They're at the concert singing along. with many of these lyrics. You know what I'm saying? I've seen them. We've all seen them if you've been to a hip hop concert. So she's absolutely right. There's this level of acceptance of y'all gonna do what you're gonna do. And we, you know, I'm a rapper myself, of course. And so, you know, we as artists do need to be more responsible, but we could be more responsible as we're calling out this hypocrisy as well, because we need to be past this day and age where we're putting out any of the derogatory lyrics towards any group, but especially our own community and culture, because we never needed to do it in the first place. And we're successful enough now in the industry in terms of people running their own labels and the like to not have to do that and still get our message across. And so I applaud what Jasmine is doing, and we really need to take control of this music. Look, I'm raising daughters now, I'm raising sons. And look, at American University, yo, when these kids are coming into class singing this stuff and have no historical context, and we just got to start, and some of my black students as well, the few that I have in there, they don't even have historical context. And I also teach a class called Global Hip Hop and Resistance. And so when you talk about an international word in terms of how this language has been populated across the world, like KRS once said, that mic you speak through goes from here to Mogadishu, and how you represent us is the issue. Yes, we do need to call ourselves out in the same way, but also call out the hypocrisy that Jasmine is mentioning. So kudos to Jasmine as well.
I want to bring in guest Rania Copeland. She is President and CEO, Black AIDS Institute. Carolyn White-Singer, Board President, San Francisco Pride, and Reverend Rob Knowles Newton, Director of the National Program for the Black AIDS Institute. Glad to have all three of you here. So this conversation, first of all, there's several different things going on here. So DaBaby drops his video where he apologizes over the weekend. Now apparently deleted the video. There are a number of different groups that actually wrote him an open letter asking to sit down and educate him. And then now you have what Jasmine is saying here. Just want to get the three of you your thoughts on this issue. So you have the homophobic comments, you have the issue dealing with comments about HIV and AIDS, and then of course you have what the language that he uses that Jasmine says is targeting black people. What do you make of the whole discussion?
Jasmine is absolutely correct. And what we talk about at Black AIDS Institute is how white supremacy and anti-blackness really is the stem of oppression that is impeding our ability to respond to HIV and AIDS. We specifically call out the misogynoir that we saw from DaBaby. I think that if you would have played the recording a couple seconds earlier, you hear him talking about black women and calling us names, and that is something that they come together. But I completely understand and agree that there is this double standard where we think that it's more acceptable, but we know it's not. And at least when it comes to HIV, we talk about, and we have so much data that shows that this misogynoir that's specific towards black women is part of the reason we see increased HIV cases amongst black women. We see higher rates of intimate partner violence among black women living with HIV. We see higher rates of homelessness among black women living with HIV as well. And so this is all because of and roots from this same anti-blackness that we see from DaBaby in much of his music, and certainly most recently from his latest comments.
Rob?
Look, I'm a same gender-loving black man who's been living with HIV for the last 16 plus years. So A, you don't die in 2 to 3 weeks. And I was surprised that his comments caused such an uproar, because I didn't expect it, because it hasn't before. Gay folks, women, we're all in the same gang when it comes to being disrespected by the hip hop industry. But I'd also say that we didn't call to cancel anybody. We called to engage and educate, and probably more important than educating DaBaby is educating the folks that listen to him, so that when he says stupid stuff, they don't believe it.
Carolyn.
Yeah, I want to echo what Reverend Rob said and really push back on this notion that DaBaby is just misinformed. DaBaby is not misinformed. DaBaby is playing out the misogynoir, the anti-blackness, the homophobia that he has been taught for generations and for decades. We have seen this within our black black community at large. And what Reverend Rob said is correct. And I don't know which one of it was in my Facebook friends. I've been having having this conversation in these internet streets a lot. But one of them did also remark that 10 years ago, if a rapper had said these same things, he would not be getting the cancellation. But I think that there's a much deeper conversation to be had about where we are here in 2021, where we do have a DaBaby making these comments here. But a couple of weeks ago, we had someone like Lil Nas X who literally had a video with naked black men in it. That's something that went viral, but that was widely accepted. So we have to have these critical conversations about where we are and where we have seemingly progressed to. But are we having the conversation about the harm that has been felt by black LGBTQ folks? And really also the fact that when you talk about, I'm not going to say white gays, I'm going to say non-black gays, because non-black and white gays all participate in this notion of black rappers as this stereotype. They don't see the offense of talking about black women in that way. And part of that is, I'll put that a lot on my generation. I'm from the generation, I'm 42 years old, so I grew up listening to the Sugar Frees of the world, and a lot of folks, talking this way about black women and black gays. But for people who are not us and not in our community, it's a little bit different. And there's an amazing writer named Ashley Marie Preston, who's a black trans woman writer and media personality, who said, let black LGBTQ folks deal with DaBaby unless you are directly affected by the things that he said. And really, black LGBTQ folks, the ones who are normally erased from these conversations, are the ones who are directly affected and should be dealing with him directly as such.
So, okay, so with that, there were a number of groups that actually wrote this open letter to DaBaby, and I've had a conversation with several African Americans who are involved in LGBTQ organizations, and so, all right, who reaches out? Who goes to him? I mean, I get the open letter part. But who's made the effort to say, hey, we want to sit down with you? Have any of you, have you heard from his camp? Are they willing to have a conversation?
We're working on it. We've been engaged with them. We were one of the folks who were in that open letter. I also want to be really clear that the majority of folks on that open letter were Black-led agencies, which we thought was really important, particularly organizations in the South where we see the majority of new HIV cases. And I think that this is, there's been some engagement, but let me tell you, we haven't sat in a room with him yet. We haven't gotten a phone call. We haven't even put in a text message chain with him. So there's some work to be done. And I think that there is a lot of protection from his representation, from Universal Music Group that he's underneath, because I think they haven't done the work, that they allow this kind of misogynoir, this anti-Blackness, and they profit off of it. And so sitting him in a room with, some of the nation's leading advocates to respond to HIV, I wish there was some more responsiveness. I wish we had a date on the books. At least there's some conversation back and forth. But I think that there is a huge systemic issue that these companies have around profiting off of anti-Blackness. And what does that mean, especially after last summer, where we believe that more people said Black Lives Matter than we ever heard before? And so we haven't seen it realized yet. We're hopeful that it will happen, but it's been slower progress than I would have hoped for.
So I'm confused here. So you just said that his record label is Universal?
Uh-huh.
Who owns Universal?
I'm not sure. You tell me, who owns Universal?
Isn't Universal owned by Comcast? Is it Universal? Is it Universal? So I'm curious. So if you haven't got on the phone with his team, what is the label saying?
We're waiting on him. We're getting back and forth. But yeah, we sent that letter last week, and we haven't heard anything definitive yet. We've been in conversation. We're trying to book something, but there's nothing that's been on the table yet. I would have hoped for a speedier response.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Especially around something that is so impactful in Black communities.
Yeah, Universal, all these people have gone through these sales. So Universal Music Group is owned by the French media conglomerate Vivendi, with Chinese tech company Tencent owning a minority stake. Their headquarters in the Netherlands, as well as in Santa Monica, California. But the interesting thing is that their subsidiaries include Interscope, Republican Records. Let me just go ahead and read them. Cash Money Records, Universal Music Group, Mercury Records, Virgin Records. These are all of the folks who will go under the label and brand. Oh, let's see here. Actually, we go Capitol Music Group. We got Decca. Oh, Motown is underneath this as well. And so Universal Music Group Nashville, Universal Music Latin Entertainment, EMI, Capitol Music Group. So and this is the point that I think that what Jasmine was also making in her piece when we talk about language. I remember when I was on Paula Zahn's show years ago at CNN before I actually officially joined them, and they had this whole hour dedicated to rap lyrics, and they wanted Russell Simmons on the show, 50 Cent, and finally I said, whoa, how in the hell are we having a conversation about the artists, but we ain't said a damn thing about the CEOs of these record labels? So from any of you, so what is the path forward? Sure, talking to him and his team is one thing. Who gonna call out his label? And who's going to say to the label, y'all got to stand up? And I guarantee you've got LGBTQ folks involved in this label who got them supporting many of their efforts. And this is, I think, what Jasmine is talking to. You got folks who are profiting off of black artists, but now you want to say something, but you wasn't saying nothing before. So Reverend Carolyn, how do we have this conversation, not just in Black America, but in broad America? What do y'all care about?
Well, I think that there's, again, a lot of different ways to go with that particular question, because especially you mentioned how many people who were in the streets last year saying Black Lives Matter. And you have to recall that the murder of George Floyd happened, I believe, a week before June Pride Month kicked off. And so I remember, as the head of a Pride organization, I remember getting emails for days from, presumably, I'm going to assume, white gay men who thought that we were going to cancel Pride because now in 2021, because George Floyd has been killed, now they need to focus on black people. So you have this issue where you have, again, I'll say non-black, not just white, but non-black people of color and white people who don't really focus so much on the issues affecting black folks, including black LGBTQ folks, including our black trans community, including our black folks who are affected by the HIV crisis, until someone literally tells them to do it. And so we can definitely focus on hitting them in the pockets. When you look at that list that you just gave, I mean, we think about Interscope, we think about Def Jam. So many of them have profited not just on language that have demeaned black women, but have been profiting on artists who have demeaned black LGBTQ focus for decades. So it's how do we get together as a black LGBTQ together with our black straight community? That is very important, because one of the things that I saw a lot in again, the internet comment section is you start to see that deep chasm between black LGBTQ folks and black straight folks who did not find any type of issue. How can we hit those companies in the pockets and force them to look at this issue if at the core of it, we're still so divided on it?
Reverend?
Look, I'm of the sense that we can separate morality and supply and demand. I grew up listening to Two Short Basement tapes in my 8th grade language lab, but I can't listen to half the stuff I used to listen to 30, 40 years ago because I've matured. And so I think educating folks, helping them come to a new place, but supply and demand is going to let those record companies do whatever they do. My hope is that the record companies will put us out on tour with these problematic artists so that we can share accurate information about HIV.
So what's the next step? What is it?
I'm hoping that there is some resourcing work to do anti-Blackness work, right? So we have Universal Music Group that is making all kinds of money off of not just DaBaby's misogynoir and anti-Blackness, but a whole lot of Black people's and Black entertainers' anti-Blackness. And I think it is unrealistic to expect that we are going to dismantle this internalized white supremacy that we have as Black communities and Black people from hundreds and hundreds of years of oppression and white supremacy that our country is steeped in. And so how can you resource these conversations that need to be had, not with white LGBTQ communities, but really within our Black community as a whole? And I think that we need to start holding these entities accountable that, when we see misogynoir, we know that there are implications for our Black community overall, whether it's HIV and AIDS, whether it's heart disease or diabetes. These things show up, this anti-Blackness, it ends in sickness for our communities, and that there's work that we have to do. And I think that we need to hold these companies accountable and demand that these resources that they have, this money that they're getting, some portion of that has to be invested back in community so that we're able to take care of us and dismantle some of this head stuff that we have going on that is about thinking that our world is so binary and white.
Carolyn, what's next?
I agree as well, and I think that for those of us who create spaces, I'm going to be very careful and not have anyone say I'm inviting DaBaby to San Francisco Pride, because that will go around the internet like wildfire. But we are we are all about building spaces and having community, and we have just as we have. Represented the Black AIDS Institute here. We have the East Bay Institute here in Oakland that would love to have these conversations, because it's really going to be about having genuine conversations. I think that's the thing that I personally fear, is that once we do get, DaBaby in a room, the same way that he put up an apology, which was more than likely not going to read, and it was not written by him. The same way that he put up an apology and took it down, we'll be able to get into a genuine, authentic conversation with him and other, rappers just like him. The Rev mentioned Too Short. I grew up in Oakland listening to Too Short. How are we going to have a whole conversation about rising above and kind of changing the way that we and our children now are listening to these lyrics and educating each other so we can move forward as a unified community?
Rob?
I think that's the important part, is we need to educate each other, right? Our motto is our people, our problem, our solution. And so I don't depend on DaBaby to become an HIV expert and go out and teach all of his audiences, but I want an invitation to do some of that stuff. And I want his audiences to start paying attention to HIV, because the epidemic is not over. A lot of folks think that AIDS ended 30 years ago, and it's not over. The look of it has changed, and it looks like us.
All right. Well, certainly appreciate the three of you. Keep us updated on what happens if you have that conversation. And we certainly will be following this story to see what happens next. Thanks a lot. Folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just 1 moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.